Okay, this is a bit of a test. I've never done this before, and it will probably just be the few people that I've let know I'm actually doing this as a test. So, any of you that are out there, let me know if you can see my horrible face. And because I'm on my best behaviour, it's a good opportunity to speak to me without me swearing. Right, let me see. Well, I'm going to behave myself, Nick and Polly. I'm on best behaviour, so there'll be no swearing. It's I should be swearing because the weather's bloody awful. But that's why I'm doing this. It's a bit of a test because I'd rather make some positive use of my time than catch some horrible illness outside in the wet and cold. Where are you two right now? Oh, the reason I'm wearing all this is because I've timed the installation of the solid fuel stove and the removal of the diesel heater badly. So we have a window here of chilliness, to say the least. Ah, the River Nene. We were going to head down that way at one point, and we probably will do next year because there's several people along that stretch that we do want to go and see. One's a very old friend of mine from Leicester, and the other one was a friend who was diving with us quite a lot in the Philippines. Because if I'm right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you go down that way. Is it that way down towards Cambridge near the River Ouse, or am I got my geography all wrong? Hello, Lynette. You've been testing your wood better. You're just rubbing it in now because I haven't got one yet. It should arrive next week. And Tony in Bulgaria. Warm and sunny in Bulgaria. Freezing in Tamworth. I promise you that. What make of stove have we bought? Now, we did try and buy a Boatman one, but I think there's huge problems with getting anything right now, steel, etc., etc., because the person we try to order it off just stopped answering messages, as Elliot, who's online now, can confirm. So, Elliot, what did we end up buying? The electrics is coming along nicely, Elliot. I've just got to finish off some of the bilge stuff. But other than that, it's a lot neater than it was before. So we've got the River Nene, we've got Bulgaria and Leicester in the house. Elliot's going to go and question that. The criteria for us with the stove was we didn't want it to be too high a kilowattage because it's a very small boat. I wanted it to be a little smaller than the average one, and I wanted it to be multi-fuel, so I wasn't tied into just like wood or coal. So, Rainy Guildford on the River Wey. I think we're all, except for my friends in the Philippines and Jamaica, I think we're all in for a bit of cold and wet today. I must confess, I wasn't expecting. I guess everyone's stuck in the boat, hiding from the rain, but I wasn't really expecting a lot of other people. I roped in a few tried and trusted people to test this live stream out. Otherwise, I'd have had the beautiful Camille make herself over and present herself. But you're going to be stuck with this mush for the test period. Who else have we got? So we're freezing right now because the diesel stove is still there, but it's completely disconnected from the fuel because we did that as we were doing all the engine room and all those parts. And I'm in the process of removing that because I'm going to sell it because I don't really want it as a backup either. Um, although I am regretting that decision today. Ah, hello, Martin. Shouldn't you be working? But I guess if I've moved back to the UK, then I need to expect a lot more of days like this because I was joking with Elliot earlier that it's probably going to be like this till March now. We've had our 36 hours of sunshine for the summer. More coffee to warm up my cockles. All right. So for those of you that are online, any questions about our plans or plans for the boat or destinations? I'm doing well with the lack of swearing, Nick and Polly, which anyone who knows me really well knows that's a major feat. Lynette, I'll say hello to Camille. She's just in the other room, but because I decided to do this impromptu, as it were, she's wrapped up in a blanket in the other room working online. Nick and Polly, this winter, we're hoping unless any, I've been looking at the closures and it seems like it should be possible, but I'm thinking of sort of around the Warwick, Leamington Spa and just outside area. Plenty of moorings, water points, and access to supermarkets there. And it's when we went through there twice this year, we quite liked it. It kind of had a mix of everything. And seeing as how it's our first winter in nearly 8 years, I shall question the wisdom of moving back to the UK, no doubt, in a few months. But it's our first real winter in 8 years, and I want to at least make sure we've got access to the basics and we're not stuck somewhere where all of those things like emptying the toilet and getting groceries and water is going to be a real ball ache. I don't need that. All right, Rob, it's apparently a Portway Arundel stove. And one of the things as well I'll mention now, seeing as I'm sat right next to it, we had to remove the steps to get access to all the electrics that we were simplifying. A lot of the wires there must have been there since the boat was built and were no longer necessary. So we removed all that. And I've realised, as much as I've been a bit of a gymnast getting out the stern door with the lack of steps, Camille's been using the doors at the bow, climbing over the bed. But that's because she's smarter than I am. But because I'm dirty, I didn't want to sort of dirty up the bedroom getting in and out. So I've turned into a Russian gymnast. But what I've realised is I don't want them steps putting back in. Because for a small boat, they did two things that I didn't really want. They encroached too far into the space that we have available and didn't provide any storage. So for me, the the steps or stairs should have either taken up less space, or if they were going to take up space, they should have provided storage, and they didn't do either of those things. So I've been concocting a master plan, as it were, and because I'm a bit of a hoarder, even though we've been overseas for many years, poor old Elliot's had most of my belongings in his garage, but I did help him build. Um, and there's two big trunks in there, travel trunks that I brought back from the US many years ago. And one of them I'm going to use as the bit reinforced on top, but I'm going to use that as the initial step out, and then have another smaller chest on top. And I'm going to use two travel trunks and chests, if you will, as the two steps that I need to get out the back. So I'll have more storage, and it'll take up much less space and way more user friendly. So that's some more stuff we've got planned to do on the boat. All right. I don't know if you can hear that, but the rain's now coming down harder. I don't know if it's coming down hard where you are. Yes, Warwick is a nice area, Nick and Polly. Great ooze, yeah. That's a good point as well. Yeah. We were reluctant to go anywhere near any proper rivers until we got the engine sorted out. When Elliot first met us at the airport, and we literally went from Heathrow Airport to Badger. There was no in between. We just went from literally immigration straight, and we did our quarantine on the boat, and Elliot was fetching us water, etc. So when we planned to go to Leicester the first time, due to the fact that I've spent a lot of time around water, working as a scuba instructor and dive shop manager for over 20 years, I thought I'm not taking the boat on the rivers just yet, because I've got a healthy respect for what I don't know. And then when we found out that the engine was massively underpowered, it proved to be a really wise decision. So I've been reluctant to go on rivers, but we'll rectify that now, because now the engine's been put in and it actually works properly, and we've got a bit more vavavoom, as it were. Yeah, we'll definitely be making those places on our destination list. Yeah, the CRT they've already published the canal closures, but the way they do it, or at least the way I've received it, it's PDF, and you have to go through it all really sort of laboriously. But just do it by section by section. So I've had a look, and it looks like when we leave here, we can head to Leicester and see family and friends, and it does look like we should be able to get back to the Warwick area. I'm going to have to look at it more closely, if I'm brutally honest, and make sure that, because it's obviously not closed for the entire winter wherever they're working. They've got a loose schedule. Yeah. But that came out early last month. That schedule came out, or maybe even the month before. Hello, Kevin. Kevin's online. He's basically my personal RCR. Actually, he's better than the RCR, because the River Canal Rescue have been not that brilliant, and Kevin's been brilliant. Oh, you found an interactive map for closures, Elliot. All right, I'll have a look for that, because what I got was just PDFs. Nick and Polly, yeah, we've got just the 14, the Beta Marine 14, because Badger's tiny, and it seems to be doing the trick. She's got. It's kind of weird, if I'm honest. You don't know what you're used to putting up with, and because we've got no frame of reference, when we first got on the boat, we knew canal boats were slow, so we didn't think anything of it when we were very, very slow. And because there was no boats on the canal traveling when we set off at the end of March, I mean, you could count on one hand how many boats we passed in days. We didn't really realize how slow we really were. And then when we left Leicester on the way to Warwick, the country started to sort of wake up, if you will, and we found that it was like the world's worst movie car chase ever, because these boats would inexorably get closer and closer. So you just feel like you're being hunted down by the narrow boat behind you. And I would just keep pulling over to the side and jumping off and holding the center line to allow them past. And it just happened far too frequently. And I was thinking, this can't be right. Do you know what I mean? And even if I really revved her to the point where she'd be screaming, you get no benefit from it. So we started to realize, and then there was a few breakdowns, and we knew the gearbox was shafted, and then it just kind of went from there. And then when Kevin took it apart and replaced the head gaskets and revealed that there was and that would have cost me an awful lot of money if I'd have took that to a boat yard. So when you started to weigh up the gearbox that we knew we'd have to replace, and then work on the cylinders and injectors and when you start adding it all up, and you're thinking, if I spend all that money on an old engine, I could find myself back at square one in 6 months. Then yeah, we went for the new Beta Marine. And with yours being 55 foot, I mean, there's a lot of them are overpowered. I was talking to someone the other day, and they reckon that the majority of the bigger boats are way overpowered. But I guess it depends on how you want to structure it, because I guess you can never have too much power. Yes, Kevin, I know she's got a bit of an egg whisk on her. It needs a bigger prop. Yeah. Well, we'll figure out, because this stretch of the canal I'm on now, Kevin, is really shallow, as you know, and all the boats around here have a problem attaining any real cruiser speed on this section. And they haven't dredged it in donkey's years. But it'll be interesting when we head back to Leicester to see how we get on. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Rob. The stove does look pretty good. Elliot was when we got let down by the previous supplier, and I started to realise the clock was ticking. And if they're having problems getting steel to the point where they're not answering emails and texts anymore, he must have just. I feel for the guy, really. If he's running his own business and he must have all these people on him, so I can understand how that would be. But a little answer to the text would have saved me a couple of weeks, because we still had to wait when we ordered the one where we've got it from now, an extra couple of weeks. And now I'm sat here in a fleece and a hat on my boat when I wouldn't be doing a live stream in my pants. But then again, maybe there's an audience for that. We'll see. Camille in a bikini, perhaps, but me in my pants, maybe not so much. Yeah, I believe so, Elliot. It was a little early for beer, so I've got a coffee. Yeah. Yes, Elliot. I think most people would. Although I have been known to wear a dress, and I've got a great pair of legs. I think the vision of me in a dress has just put tumbleweed across the internet. You're right, Archie. Archie's Elliot's boy. He's a cracking lad. Future Leicester City star, that boy. That's good to know, Nick and Polly. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. The guys, Tim and Sam, the chugging along guys, super nice couple. Got on like a house. They're like the younger Bill and Ted to me and Camille, really. Yeah, they want to do Tower Bridge with going to Thames and under Tower Bridge with us, sort of in convoy. and I'm really looking forward to that because it'll be fun to do, especially in Tiny Badger. I don't know if you've done that stretch on the Thames. I can only imagine if you have how good it is. But I quite like the idea of being with another boat, if you will, and being able to share that experience from that perspective as well. I think that's going to be a real hoot, and that's going to keep me warm this winter thinking about that. That's kind of our eye on the prize. Danny Ria, where are you, Danny? What would your advice be to a wannabe first-time boater? You'll hear loads of people say loads of different things, and we didn't do any of it. Everyone said, "Oh, rent a boat out to see if you like it first." Well, that's going to be a massive chunk of your budget gone anyway if you do that, because it ain't cheap to rent a boat anymore for a holiday. So my take on it is this: I don't know how much traveling you've done, Danny, but if you're a traveler and you've done backpacking or you've been traveling through countries and you can adapt to that kind of mindset and that kind of thing, and when you land in a new place and your temporary digs, whatever it is, if you can adapt to that, you'll have no problem on a boat. Because for me, it's very similar in some respects, because it's like backpacking with your own house. And you do have to compromise because space is a huge issue. So you can't have everything that you would want to have at home unless you've got one of them big posh 140 grand boats. But I think if you have one of those, you're almost losing a bit of the romance of the whole thing, because I think the compromise and realizing what's really important is half of the fun. Of course, if you've got no heating and no water and the toilet's full, that's not fun. But that's the compromise that you don't want, So you have to plan a little bit to avoid those eventualities. But I think streamlining your life to the point where you know what the necessities really should be. It's amazing, really. I mean, we've had to really cut our budget back, and I still think we eat better here than we did in the Philippines. No jokes about the food there, but I think we do. Oh, you've done the hire boat. So if you've done the hire boat and you like it, it depends then on your budget, because the configuration of the boats as well is so different. Every person I meet, and everyone's quite happy to let you have a look at their boat. So figuring out what layout you want, because the size of a boat is one thing, but the layout is way more important, because we've got a very tiny boat, but the layout is pretty good. Now, we could have had a boat 35, 40 foot with a terrible layout, and I've seen a few, and we wouldn't have as much livable space as we've got in this one. Work-wise as well, Danny, I don't know what you do for a living. If you have to be in a certain location, you've got two options where you're either going to have to pay to live on a marina, or you're going to have to sort of keep juggling your boat around in a certain area to continuously cruise. But my advice, really, if it's something that you want to do it. We wanted to do this 12 years ago, before we went back to Jamaica and before we went to the Philippines. Not that I regret doing those two things, but I kind of regret spending as long as we did in the Philippines, because I wish we'd come back sooner and got on a boat, because I think when you know you want to do it, you're going to enjoy it. And that's very true as well, Kevin. There's a lot of older boaters who'll tell you that it's not as friendly as it used to be. So I can only imagine how nice it used to be 20 years ago on the canals, because we've experienced nothing but amazing hospitality from people. And also, there's the occasional, I'll maintain my censorship of words, but there's the occasional person that will be that person. But the majority of it is people are really helpful. And I found that in a lot of parts of life when you make mistakes or you're unsure about something. There's always someone pointing the finger and making you feel bad. Not on the Canal network. I've found that people are more than happy to impart help and advice, and they don't seem to make you feel like a complete nincompoop for doing so. They very reassuring, and there's a calmness to it as well. Yeah, it's a real throwback. There's real friendly people on the Canal. So I think if you're in that situation, Danny, as well, there is a platform. Ping me a message on YouTube, and I'll find there's a Facebook group that deals with all the eventualities of how you go about doing that whilst living in a boating environment. Because there's plenty of people in the same situation that have made that transition, and they're able to still continue doing that whilst on the cup. Because I'm not doing that. We've come back and we've kind of tried to get on our feet doing our online stuff. I'm not entirely sure of the ins and outs, but I did look at it just in case we would have to. And I know there's a Facebook group that deals with all of that. So ping me a message and I'll find that group for you. Yeah, well, we had the same issue, Lynette, when we were decluttering. We had to. We couldn't carry all of our stuff back from the Philippines anyway, and for Camille it was quite heartbreaking. I don't really want to speak too much on her behalf, but there was a lot of stuff that had a lot of sentimental value, clothes, etc., etc. But you had to make that decision where we had to get rid because we knew what we were going to be heading into, and we had to get really brutal with belongings because we did entertain the idea of getting a container, but then I realised that we still had a lot of stuff in storage at Elliot's, as he'll be keen to remind me. But some of that's coming useful. I mean, the hat. I mean, when we got on the boat, my old Air Force kit bag was on here, and he'd opened it up in storage, and the first thing he saw was woolly hats, and thought, "Oh, they'll come in useful." So we've managed to take a few things out of storage, and hopefully a few more with those trunks soon. But yeah, it is hard to decide because we grow attached to stuff. But I think it's quite liberating once you've made the decision to get rid of it. Although I have to say, we didn't get rid of a few things like 8 years ago, like the garden chairs, the fishing chairs, and they're on the roof of the boat now. We used them, so we didn't have to rebuy them because they were still in storage. I think Elliot was a little bit annoyed because he used to use the one with the feet up out front of his house. Hello, Kyle. Stuff's been in storage for about 8 years. Do I miss being underwater? No, if I'm honest, at the moment, no. I'm sure I'll probably get the urge once again. But me and Elliot have been to Stony Cove, and the prospect of freezing my chuddies off on a day like today, we used to come up and we used to sort of spend 2 hours like lizards trying to get bask in the sun or whatever to warm up, because it wasn't our air supply or the dive computer that told us when to come up. It was how bloody cold we were. But at the moment, I don't miss anything about diving at all. I'm sure I'll get back into it at some point, but I just don't. Diving in puddles is no fun, Kevin. That is exactly right, which is why you're off to Egypt. Well, UK diving, Cole, there is some amazing UK diving. There really is. It's just, I've been spoiled now. And after being spoiled in, Belize and Mozambique and Zanzibar, you ain't going to get me in cold water, no chance. No, I've had enough. The only thing that would tempt me is the continental shelf thing, as in Iceland, where you can touch America and Europe, and it's crystal clear. I don't mind freezing for that experience. Yeah, Elliot, I sold most of my kit. I sold all but two of my regulators. I've still got the twin hose in storage at someone's house, though. I'm not getting rid of that. Hello, Sonny. Happy days. Where are you, Sundeep? Well, Cebu Dive Centre's still there, Kyle, and Phil, who runs it, super nice guy. And if you wanted to get into some tech diving or anything like that, he's the guy to go to. So if you wanted to expand your horizons with diving, I can't think of a better person to learn from, really. Of course, it's not going to have the same charm as it did when I ran the place. I say charm, my business model was Stockholm syndrome. Hello, Russ. Camille's in there hiding from the camera because I didn't tell her I was going to be doing this. And, you know, but this was supposed to be a test. So the next time I do one of these, which I've got to be honest, this is actually a lot of fun. It's nice answering questions. So the next time I do this, I'll make an announcement on one of the videos, and then Camille will join in for that one. Maybe I'll be in my pants with the hot stove on it, and I'll be warm, not wearing a woolly hat. Hello, Mark. Engine's purring along nicely. Actually, I'm super happy with it because it was like the engine had COVID before. It was just coughing and spluttering trying to start it, and it was. But you got used to it. You're pulling, you just got used to putting the choke up and going and going and going. And now it just starts. It's almost a bit baffling. You're like, oh, there's no sort of fighting. It just starts. So long may that continue. What did you get from the shops? Any beer? Would I like to live on a wide beam? Would I like to live on one? For me, I think it'd be like living on a house. I think it would be nice, but I think it would. I think the limitations and the restrictions of what you would be able to do and where you would be able to go on it, I think I would find frustrating. Would I like a longer one? It's a personal question. Um, I mean, I think yes, we do want to get a bigger boat. I mean, but I'm not in a rush because I think what we've learned in the first 6, 7 months of being on boats has been invaluable. And so I don't think I would rush into getting a bigger boat just because it is bigger. I think it's going to have to tick a few boxes for sure. And also, I like a boat to have a bit of character. I think Badger's got loads of character. So what she lacks in size, she more than makes up for in personality for sure. Who would win? Tim and Sam chugging along. Who would win if you and Camille did a cook-off? Camille. Yeah, I can cook. It's just that not poisoning people and making a good meal is two different things. I have my moments, but it's like thinking that you can fight and then coming up against someone who's a trained fighter. You're going to lose. Do you know what I mean? So no matter how big or strong you are, you're going to lose. Mind you, I'd lose in a fight against Camille as well, if I'm absolutely honest. So she'd probably beat me on both counts. All right, Sonny, that's a deal, right? I'll send you my location and you can bring me a beer. I mean, I can't argue with fantastic logic that you've got. I have known you since you were 3, and I haven't scared you off yet. if you could go back and make the decision again, what changes would you make? That's a difficult question, Nick and Polly, because if I'm really honest, the situation that we found ourselves in was, I mean, if we'd have waited just 2 more weeks before deciding to buy a boat, we would have had to spend another £2,500 in hotel quarantine. I mean, that was the situation that we got to a point where the boats were selling so fast that I just had three basic criteria. It better not sink as long as it can move. And the most important one is that we would be able to live on it immediately. Because I figure anything else, because for me, you were saving money by not paying rent anywhere. So we've had 6 months of not having to pay rent on an apartment or a house. So even though we've had to spend money on an engine, that balances out, really. But like I said, if we'd have waited 2 more weeks in the Philippines, we would have been in hotel quarantine, and that would have cost us, the pair of us, about £2,500, and that would have come off the budget. So for me, if I was to do it again, I would have quit my job a year earlier before COVID and been planning this for a lot longer. And another thing is, all the things that have happened have taught me huge lessons. I've learned massive amounts about how the boats work. And another thing is, the boatyard where we've ended up to get this work done, I may never have discovered it. And the people who run the boatyard, and also the people who live, because it's kind of like a boatyard stroke wharf, because there are people who are moored here permanently. We've been accepted here like one of the family, and people have done so much for us. It's been at times a little bit, humbling. But the gang that do the work on the boats here, brilliant. So anything that I plan to do with the boat in the future, I'll be coming here. And we have stopped in at a few other places that I won't name. I'll tell you privately, but I wouldn't go back there, because you can see that their dollar signs are their only motivation. Whereas here, yes, they've got to make a living, but he's busy enough anyway. It's a bit like my old dive shop. We never did any advertising, and we were always fully booked because of word of mouth. And that's kind of how this place is as well. You look after people and do the right thing, then it should follow. I'm missing a few questions. Yeah, longer one, Kyle. I'll look forward to bumping into you soon, Mark. Actually, I'll let you know when we're back in the area. You mean, Kevin, that you only come up for Camille's cooking and it's not my devastating charm and personality? I'm wounded, mate. I am absolutely wounded. Steel is in short supply and the boat's prices are indeed going to go up. Yeah, 100%. But I'm not in a rush to get rid of Badger. I think our mission with Badger is to prove that you can do an amazing amount with something small, which has been my lifelong goal. And no council tax, Lynette. Absolutely. We've made a lot of friends on the canal so far, and weirdly, as much as our channel was very new and it's not hugely popular, we have been recognised a fair amount, and people stop and chat about that, and that I find that quite amusing, and it's quite nice as well. And the feedback has been really good. But I think it's kind of easier. I used to use this analogy in the dive shop that diving was a great leveler, because it never happened, but we used to get, if you could possibly get like a brain surgeon and a plumber like Elliot discussing like nudibranchs, little sea slugs, and the only time these two people would meet in normal life would be if one needed brain surgery or the other one's toilet was blocked. Yet they'll be in deep conversation about sea creatures, and I find that for the most part, not all, because some people do have a little bit of an issue with snobbery, but I think on the most part, people in the Canal network have a shared love of all things boating and slow and laid back lifestyle. And I think it's a lot easier to engage with people in conversation. I think, but I think that even stretches as far as people who just use the Canal network to walk their dogs, because when they, a bit like when they go on holiday or walk into my dive shop, if you will, when they're on the Canal network, they've taken a step outside of their normal lives and slow down a bit. I think it's a lot easier to sort of engage with people on this network. Do I find Lynette? Do I find going through locks an easier task than longer boats, so it does not matter? I think it's easier in some respects because Badger's quite light. So if you jump off, it's really easy with the centre line to pull us straight into the side. And I've watched a few people with the longer, sort of heavier boats, especially if there's a little bit of wind, and they struggle a little bit. But I've also gone through locks with people with much bigger boats, and the process is relatively the same. What slows us down is talking, because we always end up just jibber jabbering with whoever we're going through the locks with. But yeah, there are benefits. The biggest benefit I found to with Badger is I can spin around with the ropes. That sounds rude, but yeah, I can. There's very few stretches of canal that are too narrow for me to spin around, so it saves me having to find a winding hole to sort of turn around. Um, and the first time I did it, I was quite nervous, thinking that people would be watching. And now I'm hoping they're watching because it's so easy to do. And you can see that thinking it was so easy to do that when I filmed it for the vlog the other week, I had the rope on the wrong peg and I kind of screwed up the filming. So I spun it round 3 times just to film it. And on the third time, there was some people crossing the bridge and they thought that there was a rogue boat just drifting down the canal because they couldn't see anybody on it, and they came running down to see what was going on. But yeah, there's a benefit to having the small one, as the actress said to the bishop. Julian. Oh wow. Oh, I'd have to see your face, mate. Julian got his advanced certification at Cebu Dive Centre. Awesome. Nah, no, I mean, as much as I don't really miss it, we had some good fun there. I mean, I can't. You came to the dive centre and we had some real fun there sometimes, and I think that was largely due to the fact that when you have the right clientele, so when you got the right audience in house, you can go down a gear and you don't have to pretend. And that was kind of my whole objective with the place was to. I learned years ago working behind a bar with the drunks that are always in at early doors. At the moment, I didn't have to pretend anymore. I could just be myself within reason. I used to go home a lot less mentally tired because I'm not pretending all day. And so I used to try and do that as much as possible in the dive center. And what I found was that the quicker you can put someone at ease, the more they relax, the easier it is to get them diving properly anyway, because relaxing is the biggest thing with diving. But also, everyone just became like family and you could just be yourself. So people felt at home quicker at the dive center, and I could just behave like a clown all day long, and it was great. So yeah, I do miss that. And thanks, Julian. Where are you now? That's right, Elliot. Nember Island was a lot like that as well. Well, Nember Island was a lot like that, except they were all like ridiculously rich on that island. Yeah, except for us that work there, of course. That's a good point, and I've had this conversation with Kevin. So you've had your boat 14 years and it's changed many times because your needs change or you realize there's better ways of doing things, I can imagine. And you got like way more experience of doing this than we do. But I've often thought, excuse me, that what I would like to do is, if I had the opportunity with a shell, but I wouldn't want a brand new shell because I think a lot of them lack a little soul. But if I had a shell to work with, starting with um, maybe a range multi-fuel stove heater stroke cooker and oven, like an Arga, but not an Arga. I think you could tick loads of boxes from the get go there because you're going to save a lot of space because you've got a lot of things rolled into one, loads of character. You've got your heat and your cooking. Probably you can do your hot water from it with a back boiler as well. So yeah, I mean, if I could start from scratch like that, I would start planning from that outwards. And I think one of the things that I would do as well is I would make the electrics and the plumbing way more accessible than it is on just about every boat I've seen so far, because you're going to have issues, and if they're a silent issue, it could become a problem. I think at the dive shop once we had water just coming up out of the concrete out of the middle of nowhere, and we were all baffled as to where this water was coming from, and we were wondering how much water we were losing. So I had the idea, because we'd had an extension built for the dormitory for the backpackers, and we had external plumbing. And then we replumbed the entire dive shop, so all the plumbing was visible. And Elliot might comment on this because he is a plumber. But what it meant at the dive shop was that if we had any problems, we knew where they were, and also because there was hidden leaks that one showed, and on a boat that could cause a problem because you could have a slowly sort of rising water in your bilge, etc., or be causing corrosion, or causing you to go to the water point more times than you need to. But at the dive shop, our water bill came down hugely because we were losing water without realizing it. So again, if I was to build a boat from scratch or have the ability to do things from scratch, I'd start with probably the fuel burner, so incorporate cooking and heating into that, and then I would make sure that the plumbing. I mean, I might make it a bit steampunk. I'd have some of the plumbing as part of the aesthetic as well. All right, Lynette, take it easy. Hopefully, see you soon. That's right, Kyle. Big clown. The Netherlands, Julian. One of our favourite places. Yeah, Camille was studying in the Netherlands when I went over there. Well, we met in Jamaica, but she was studying in Leiden. And then I took her to Prague when I asked her to marry. But we spent a lot of time in the Netherlands. Yeah, one of our favourite places. That's good to know, Mark, as well. Yeah, it's nice to be able to spin them around that easy, and the boats, that is. And I'm glad to see that you coped on the rivers, because that's exactly what we're planning to do next year. Hello, Caitlin from Australia. I've answered your messages repeatedly. Yeah, awesome. No, hello. I bet your weather's a little bit better than ours at the moment. That's why we're doing this, because it's awful, diabolical outside. Grey, dull, monotonous, and cold. Accessible plumbing, absolutely, Elliot. Yeah, but I'd make it part of the aesthetic, steampunk it, and if you had it sturdy enough, you can dry your towels off, especially if it was plumbed into the back boiler. You could dry it. It's like almost like having a radiator, copper pipe exposed, very steampunk. You could go like 20,000 leagues under the sea. How long did you spend in Jamaica? Oh, years. I mean, Elliot online here came out to see me twice in those years, and I taught him to dive and did his advance on those occasions. But for about 5 years, I spent my winters in Zanzibar and my summers in Jamaica. So I started off in Jamaica full time, and then I applied for a job in Zanzibar as a joke, and they foolishly gave it me. And I spent half the year. I did 2 stints in Zanzibar on the little private island, and then the summers in Jamaica. Did that for 5 years. So I think off and on, if you were to add in all the years, over a period of about 11 years, I was in Jamaica an awful lot. And it's got a bad reputation. I mean, some of it is warranted, but you don't have to spend all your time on the lodges. Just don't be an idiot, you know. And yeah, Jamaica gets my vote. I think actually, if more people went, you'd have less problems. And if more people went and didn't go on to the all-inclusive resorts, um, although I had a free 10 days on one of the all-inclusives, didn't I, Elliot? Oh yes. We can't seem to find anything we like more than we have. Yeah, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think I think we get led this eternal dream that somehow you've got to replace things all the time for them to be better. And I think if you've had 14 years to continually evolve that boat, that's going to have a charm all of its own, isn't it? Really? Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, I see some of these new boats that go past us, and other than the fact that they've probably got like all singing, all dancing washing machines and great space and storage and everything else, they just seem to lack a little bit of soul. They kind of remind me of when you used to go on holiday to Yarmouth or somewhere, and you go into the caravans. That plastic vibe. Do you know what I mean? They kind of remind me of that. So I don't want to spend 100 grand on a boat that reminds me of going to Mablethorpe. Do you know what I mean? No, I don't really see the point. I like the ones that have got that rustic charm. Do you know what I mean? And I think even if I had a newish boat, I think I would want the interior to reflect, yeah, something a bit more rustic and less plastic. Yeah, someone asked me that earlier, Caitlin. I think winter we're going to go. We liked the Leamington Spa Warwick area, and also the outlet. Not going up the Hatton Flight in the winter, but if we get adventurous, maybe again. But and then going out of Leamington back towards the Oxford and the Grand Union, it's nice, and there's lots of nice countryside, water points, mooring spots. Leamington, Leamington and Warwick's all one area anyway. Really, you can walk between the two, and very convenient shopping there. So I think that might be our spot for winter. Wow. Well, this is the thing. It seems like the older boats, the steel was old British steel, that really good quality. And as they started, well, some manufacturers started to bring in um, cheaper quality steel. That's why there's a lot of problems. But I'm not convinced that the new builds. I'm not convinced that you'll see those boats in 40 years on the canal. Um, I think it's form over function. Everything looks good, but isn't as solid. I mean, you could, yeah, that's how I look at that. There was a guy we were moored next to, and Kevin will remember this guy. He had it was over 100-year old. The hull was, and he'd had the upper half constructed all to his own design. So the actual working boat hull was over 100 years old. It was all riveted and as solid as the day is long. You could probably could be an icebreaker in the Arctic with it. But I don't think any of them boats that they're building now that you see on some of these sort of more popular vlogs, I can't see how they'd be great for like 10, 15 years, which is more than most people would need them for. But I just don't think would be built to the same spec that some of those old solid boats were built in the 70s. Yes, that's what I said, Kevin. If it works fine, don't fix it. Yeah, Russ. I love walking the canal towpath. I'm looking for now. Tim and Sam from Chugging Along have disappeared down that way. They're my scouts. Tim and Samuel, my scouts. You've got to learn everything and matrix that knowledge into my head so I don't have to do any of that hard legwork myself. But I'm looking forward to going down that neck of the woods, Russ, to sort of, I think it'll be a really interesting experience. And the sheer variety of boats will be like more concentrated there. But it's amazing all the different vessels that we see. And you get boat envy all the time. You'll see some of these boats and you go, oh, that looks great. Yeah, I think the boats have always had to be blacked, Caitlin. Yeah. I mean, even marine vessels have to have the hulls. I mean, Kevin was a marine engineer offshore for many years, and he's told me a few stories of the bigger boats going through their hull preservation, if you will. But yeah, I think they've all. I think back in the day, though, they used to use very different kind of bitumen-based products than they do now. But yeah, yeah, the hulls do need to be protected, regardless of what material they're made out of. What whiskey? Oh, you remember? Oh, yeah, it was your birthday. Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. The guy with the very old hull also had some very old whiskey, and it got the better of Kevin that day. I mean, we've had our boat out, Caitlin, to have her blacked, as you saw in one of the vlogs. But as much as you don't have to do it every, it's about 2 or 3 years, they say. But I think towards the end of sort of this time next year, just before, I might do it again before the 2 years. And I'll probably bring it here because I've watched what they've been doing. They do a solid job. Yeah. Yeah, Mark, that's what I mean. I've been hearing this left, right, and centre. There seemed to be a bit of a, with one of the manufacturers, there seemed to be a window where they were purchasing really poor quality steel, and that's why that particular manufacturer comes up on the insurance. Do you have one of these boats? Where in Australia are you, Caitlin? I've had a lot of Australian instructors work for me. Entertaining to say the least, they were. Ah, Perth. A lot of South Africans in Perth, if I'm right. Mm. It is coffee, and no rum in it, no whiskey in it. I promise. Yeah, we were surprised with Badger. Badger was 83, and when we took her out for blacking, the hull was in great shape. Yes, Claire, no rum. I'm being a good boy. It's not 4:30 yet. 4:30 was our tradition in the Philippines because in the tropics the sun always goes down pretty much 6 o'clock every day. So 4:30 was the civilized time to start boozing in preparation for the sunsets and the nonsense talk as well. It's also good to keep you in check because if you had a bar, the dive centre had a bar on the beach, which is a dangerous thing. So you have to keep yourself in check. Is it cheaper to buy a boat in the winter? Well, you hear this, but I think it just depends on who's selling the boat because the reasons that any individual is selling anything are massively different. So everyone's circumstances are different, and I think the prices can come tumbling down for some boats because they may have been overpriced to begin with. But then some people, it just depends on how desperate they are to get rid of it. Are they leaving the country? Are they buying a new boat? Blah blah blah. I just think at the moment we're in a situation with steel prices going up, with the whole COVID situation drawing attention to the fact that boats are a viable option, an alternative for finding somewhere to live. I think all these things have driven the price up. And I think it's a little bit different than it was about 2 years ago. I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it may have been seasonally easier to get a cheaper boat in the winter. I'm not so sure that's the case at the moment because they're in demand. Yes, Russ, we will be coming down to London. We're hoping to come down in the spring. We want to do Tower Bridge with Tim and Sam. And I want to explore the whole area anyway. It looks really quite interesting. Um, and to see London from that perspective would be awesome. And I've got my godparents to visit on the way down as well. The gearbox, Mark, came with the engine. It's a PRM. Trev, you're a bad boy. You do surprise me. The thing about the whole fuel situation over here, Caitlin, is that there really isn't a shortage. It was just one. It was just BP had a problem, and what caused the supply problem was the fact that the prime minister is such a nincompoop that he announced to the public that there was going to be an issue, that there wasn't, and the media picked up on it, and then people do what they always do with toilet paper or anything else. They just panicked. So everybody ran out to go and buy fuel. And then, of course, I mean, it's like anything. There's these places buy fuel in and store it because they kind of know how much fuel they're normally going to sell on a monthly basis. And then, of course, if everyone just goes mad, you run out. Same with anything, bread, chocolate. Um, but on the canal, it's the very opposite of going mad. I mean, there's no, and we also buy different diesel. It's red diesel, um, which is cheaper. And we topped up the other day. We went in, and there's no rush. There's no shortage. There is a problem with gas, cooking gas, but that's been caused because a lot of people have been getting clever with life hacks and destroying the gas bottles to make fire pits and barbecues out of, and then there's a shortage of bottles to refill. This has been caused by there's a supposed deposit on the Calagas bottles, but you never get your deposit back, so there's no incentive. You just exchange one bottle for the other. But if you're not going to get your deposit back from anyone because it's such a rigmarole, then people are just like, well, I'll do something else with the empty bottle. And they inevitably, if they're not going to be needing it to refill it with gas, then they destroy it to use as a barbecue. That's caused a problem. Yeah, Ross, we do intend to do the Thames. Now we've got a bit more of a power plant. Um, I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a real adventure. I mean, a lot of people have said to us, "I can't believe you moved back to the UK." But I've got to be honest, living on a narrowboat and doing what we've been doing, I feel has been way more adventurous than when I hitchhiked through Africa or going to work in the Philippines. Because it's not a temporary thing. It's almost a well, everything's temporary, but it's our home as well. And we've had to learn everything. And being able to go somewhere and then just thinking about it, we'll be able to go on cruise and live on the Thames for a bit. Brilliant. I mean, what this lifestyle opens up to people. That's why I'm always baffled as to why people would stay in a marina, because the ability to be able to, I know with work, etc., etc., some people won't have the choice, but the ability to just untie the boat, shoot off a few miles, tie up, spend another night in another location, or in Trevor's case, find a new pub to go and frequent. But it opens up so much of the country. We spent 4 years over here about a decade ago, and I think we saw more of the country in 3 months on Badger than we did in 4 years of living here the last time. That's the plan, Mark. Yeah, we're gonna head all the way down the GU, all the way down to the Thames. I've done some of the Oxford already, and you're right. The stretch that we've done, some of it's been beautiful. So yeah, I wouldn't mind coming back that way, and then that would complete the whole lot. Then we will have seen all of it. So yeah, that's a good plan, and I can discuss that with Tim and Sam because they've done that stretch already. I've got to be honest, guys. This has been real fun. I kind of messaged a few people because it was raining outside, and so I want to test a live stream out just because I wanted to do one with Camille later on in a week or so. And I really didn't anticipate all of this, and it's been a real it's made my day because it was a miserable day, and now I'm smiling. So cheers for that, everybody. And I really didn't expect so many people, but I guess with time zones, etc., I hadn't really thought about that, and it's warmed me up. Questions. Oh, and um, Kyle here has just sent me those starry eyes. Sent us a care package with loads of Caribbean food, and you may have seen in one of the vlogs. And Camille's always mysterious, Kyle. So she disappeared and makes food and doesn't tell me what she's doing. So when she did the jackfruit curry, I had no clue that's what she was doing with it. And I know you've gone vegan now, but that was amazing. That jackfruit curry was amazing. Oh, we've kept you up, Caitlin. Right, everybody, you've kept Caitlin up. You're all to be ashamed of yourselves. What time is it there then? It must be. I'm trying to think. It must be way ahead of us because the Philippines is about 7 hours ahead. So you must be what, 10 hours maybe? What electrics are you running on Badger? Solar, etc. Yeah, we have got a solar panel. I've got one here as well. But yeah, the solar, and we've got an extra battery now, so we've added a third leisure battery to the equation. So it's just solar and the engine. So the engine tops up, and we've got an inverter inside for our 240, etc. So, and now we've got the new engine in, which we can run without sounding like we're a Saturn V rocket off to the moon. We've been running that because we're sort of stuck here getting work done. We've been running that for a few hours on days like today to top the batteries up, which hasn't been a problem. But I think in the winter, rather than just running the engine simply to run it, might as well change location. So I'm going to get into a bit of a routine along the stretch, make sure we've got enough food, go back and forth and stay in that particular area over winter and charge the batteries at the same time, because we're not going to get much out of the solar through the winter. But when it's sunny, it works extremely well. Ah, you're on the same as Philippines time. Gotcha. Yes, Carl, do give that recipe a try. I found that the jackfruit was a real interesting, almost chicken, if you will, substitute. And that's delish. All of that was great. Much appreciated. That was really good. Yeah, that kept us going for quite a long time. Mind you, Kevin's got loads of. Kevin's always trying to torture us with hot sauce, so he brought us the pain hot sauce, but we liked that. So then he bought us the extreme, and that was extreme, and various other ones. Started with the dumbass one, I believe. There is a little freezer. Michael. We have got a little freezer, but we don't really keep much in there. We've had a lot of issues because with the engine, etc., and the batteries. So we stopped sort of using the freezer for too much stuff. So we sort of buy meats, anything you would freeze as we need it, and try and plan it a little bit better. And if we're in Nottingham, Michael, I'll let you know. We're all good right now, Kyle. It's all good. Yeah. You've been an angel as it is. Good night, Caitlin. You take it easy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll go through a lot of different ideas as well, Nick and Polly. It's just one of those things where, as we're sort of evolving, some of the issues that have cropped up. So the fact that I had to take those steps down to get to the electrics, once they were removed, it starts to make you think, and you're going, well, actually, that could be done differently. And I'm sure that's when we do the stove, because that's the next thing that goes in about a week's time. So I know that when we move the fridge over to the other side and the stove goes in there, the living shape, if you will, of the boat's going to change. And I'm sure that's then going to sort of have a ripple effect and make us think differently about where we put certain things. And so, yeah, one thing will lead to the other. And then 14 years later, we'll probably still be on Badger talking about how we've morphed everything. Hello, Jerry. No, we're not throwing any bow lines off today. I've not seen a single smiling face go past in the boats today. It's awful weather out there, so they're braver than we are. We've got no need to go anywhere, so I'm staying right here. Ah, yes, Michael. Michael, Kyle, Michael. He's the one who sent us the care package. And Kyle, Mickle there, he does vegan food in Nottingham. Michael is an amazing cook. Amazing. Nate. Hello, Nate. Does your wife cook Jamaican food? You can't beat stew, chicken. Trust me, Camille loves to cook Jamaican food, and even if she's doing sort of a traditional English dish, if you will, there's always a Jamaican twist to it, and she loves cooking with any kind of dark beers. She'll experiment with all of that stuff. Mind you, having said that, when I do oxtail, I like to do it with I tend to do it with wine, not. But we have done it with brown ale before as well, and Guinness. Hello, Glyn. Where did we pass you to, Nick and Polly? I'm trying to remember where we passed you. Hello, Gene and Deb in Baltimore. I've been through, but Baltimore. You've got the Ratbirds. You know the score. That's the deal, Russ. When we're heading down there, we'll let you know. Probably going to be in the spring sometime. Is the canal less busy? It's not noticeably less busy, but we're in a place here where there's not just the boatyard that we're on, there's a marina the other side of the bridge. And then we're at a junction here at Paisley. And so there's a marina not far away. Fradley Junction's also, excuse me, not very far away. So there seems to be a lot of activity in this area. Um, yeah, a lot of it is people just the rental boats are out. Although you'd be kicking yourself if you rented a boat this weekend in this weather. Um, but then there's a lot of people who live on the marinas who then just nip out for a few days and spend a few days down here and then come back up again. Um, it's still quite busy. Kyle and Michael, I'm glad you two have hooked up. That will be that'll be a good food connection, I promise you. Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think where that was on the Coventry, Nick and Polly, because I do I like the friendliness of the boaters. So because you invariably, it's terrible, but you invariably, as you're going past someone's boat, if you're driving, you can't help but look in. So I know that when people are going past, they're going to look in. So I've always got to wave. Thanks, Kilgore. Much appreciated. Yeah. Glyn, red diesel supplies, no shortages. I was saying earlier, I don't really believe there is any. The shortages have been caused by the panic. So once people realise that there is no panic, everything is just normal. Ah, okay, okay. Well, Nick and Polly, next time, don't be shy. Stop and say hello. Grand Junction Arms. Well, when we're heading down that way, Russ, well, I think it'll be early spring, um, depending on closures and weather. We'll be heading down there to hook up with the younger Bill and Ted, Tim and Sam. Yeah, well, yeah, it's true. I mean, with the new stove in, I might very well just be in my pants. But yeah, probably not. So, any of you guys out there on boats, where are you planning to be this winter? Glyn, I need to persuade Camille to do some more cooking. The curry looked amazing. Yeah, the curry was amazing, Glyn. Um, although I'll tell you a funny story, Glyn. When I first met her, I didn't think she could cook because she used to feed me these. I used to call them cat food sandwiches. They're horrible, and the only reason I used to eat them is because I liked her. So I figure I can't tell her that the food that she's giving me is horrible. And then years and years later, when we got married, I still assumed that she couldn't cook because we'd never really cohabited for more than a few days. So I was doing the cooking, and then one day I went to work, and she said, "Oh, we're going to cook dinner tonight," and I was like, "Oh no!" And she did lamb, but when I got home, it was like lamb with a Jamaican twist, and it was superb. And I was amazed. And I says, I didn't know you could cook. And she says, of course, if you can read, you can cook. I said, well, what did you feed me them horrible sandwiches for back in Jamaica? But there were those Viennese, whatever, sausages in tins, and she likes them. They're vile. So, yeah, that was a bonus when I found out that she could cook. And not only cook, but amazingly well. Yeah. It's the only reason that, apart from the beer, that Kevin comes up to fix the engine and whatnot. Yeah, too true, mate. Too true. Yeah. To be fair, I liked her enough that if they were cat food, I probably would have ate them. They weren't, but I probably would have. I would have gone that far. Great ooze, yes. Well, to be fair as well, when she did the when Camille did the cooking segment, she did that for a project that she does online on another sort of crypto blog, and I just stole it for the vlog. I asked her if I could have it, and I added it in there. So every now and again, she'll be doing stuff like that, and when she does, I do try and tend to steal the footage because I did it as well for the. She did. She was picking blackberries to make muffins with. Same thing. She was doing that for a different project, but I used it on the vlog. It's quite handy as well. I like it if she's done something that's completely independent from what I'm doing as well, because it's quite nice to be able to tie in. No, Russ, we're not getting a diesel heater. I've just removed. I've timed it all very very badly. Um, well, partially because we couldn't get the solid fuel stove in as quickly as we wanted to. We're getting the multi-fuel stove, wood and coal, and I don't like the diesel Eberspatcher that we had in here. I found that they're very abusive of your batteries when they kick in. They really do, and so I've made the decision to not even use it as a backup and just remove it from the system completely. So when we replaced the engine, one of the feeds that was going, the diesel feed for the Eberspatcher, we just disconnected it because I assumed that by now we would be up and running with the solid fuel stove, but we're not, which is why I'm inside in a fleece and a Cleveland Browns hat. Gene and Deb, where in Baltimore are you located? See, my family's from Cleveland, so the fact you stole our football team off us is a sore point. Yes, Russ, it is getting cold. I'm feeling it. Today's the first day. I think it's because there's nothing going on today, and we're sort of stuck in the boat, and it's absolutely chucking it down with rain. That I've noticed that it is a little bit chilly. And yesterday the sun came out in the afternoon, so it kind of flattered to deceive. So yeah, the sooner we get the nice cozy stove in, the better. No, Glyn. Camille's been through a winter before now. I think it was about 13 years ago when she first came back over here. She's been over here before because we've got family down in Essex and whatnot. But when we got married and she came here about 13 years ago, I said, "Oh, winters aren't very cold, blah blah blah," and she bought back from Lidl some snow cleats, and I was thinking, "What have you bought these for? It's not Alaska, it's Leicester." Um, but there was the coldest winter for 25 years that year, so those cleats came in very handy. So yeah, we've been through one before. We just haven't been through one for 8 years. Hey, Mark, no, the stove's going to be right in the middle of the boat, so it will be perfect for heating both living spaces because there's only really two. You've got the bedroom, obviously, in the bow, and then you've got what is basically the galley in the stern, and it will be right in front of me where I am here. So it'll blow through into the bedroom, and it will heat this room. It's perfectly situated, I'm hoping. Hello, Joha in Thailand. Thailand. Well, we've been in the Philippines for many, many years. We didn't get to Thailand. I was hoping to go and visit a friend out there that Kevin went to go and see a few times, but we never got there. Whereabouts in Thailand are you? And are you diving? Yeah, Russ, we have used one of those travelling barges. I think we were in Hopwas. It was last April, and Kevin had come up and delivered a barbecue, and we'd run out of gas. Well, one of the cylinders had gone the day before, and then one of the working boats just happened to come round the corner. So yeah, I did use one. Yeah, I was quite excited when it came round the corner. If I'm honest, I've seen them on other people's videos, and then it came round, and I was like really happy that we had like an empty Calagas bottle to buy, so I could buy one, because it was quite nice to be able. I've never done that before, and I'm all for using those as a small business. I mean, if the canals become more popular, there's now people. You don't see it very often, but I've heard of it. People doing pizzas now. I mean, if every stretch of the canal had a pizza boat, oh my gosh. Yeah, Mark, I've been told from various people, especially on the bigger boats, if their stove is all the way in one extremity of the boat, it really doesn't heat up the other end of the boat. So I mean, Badger's small. I'm not sure we would have that problem, but I think being positioned in the middle is perfect. Yep, I'll be in my pants. But I've got some nice Uniqlo pants, so I'm quite particular. I don't necessarily dress to impress, but I do like nice underwear. Ah, near Pattaya. Are you a diver, Joha? If you are, when things return to some semblance of normality, you want to get yourself out to the Philippines. Yeah, one of the Nick and Polly, one of the fans that definitely have to get one of those. And I think that with us, the way it'll be situated, the fan I'll have blowing the air into the bedroom, because it will already pretty much, the stove will already be here in this room. Yeah, Russ, I think there's scope. I think if things are slightly changing with the way, and what I'm hearing it everywhere, I've met loads of people that have come back from France or have come back from everywhere, and they're buying boats and they're seeing living on boats as a viable alternative. If that continues, I see there being scope along certain stretches of canal for people to offer more services than just sort of coal and gas, because one of the things that is can be difficult is the convenience factor of certain things. But the only things I've read about are beer boats and pizza boats. But that's a great start. I mean, come on, if we had those on every stretch of the canal, a pizza boat and a beer boat, can civilization reach a higher peak than that? Yeah, well, Tim and Sam from the Chugging Along vlog, when I was in the Philippines, I was trying to passively learn as much as possible about the network, because we knew we were going to do it. We knew we were going to buy a boat, or at least we knew we were going to try to. And there was loads of little bits about the canal network that I had to admit I didn't really know about. So by watching all the vlogs, because as you know, there's loads of them, loads and loads and loads. I particularly liked watching Robbie Cumming. I like his grounded approach to it. I like the fact that he hasn't got all the frills that go with it all. and it has the right mix. And then I stumbled across Tim and Sam, and they kind of mirrored in a way ourselves, because aside from the other obvious similarity between them as a couple and us as a couple, but they'd come back from Asia, so they were literally about a year ahead of us. They'd literally left Asia to come and live on a narrowboat in the UK, which was exactly what we were going to be doing. And I messaged them at the time, one of the very early vlogs, possibly the first one, to sort of say this. And we exchanged a few messages over that particular period of time. And then when we actually finally got on the boat and I released a vlog, they messaged me and we sort of arranged to meet in Leamington. And we just got on super well. They're a lovely couple. I mean, um, yeah, just really nice people. And we just clicked, and they've come to see us again on their way through here. And Kevin was with us at the same time, and another friend came in her camper van, and we had a big barbecue on the canal. And it's just, I love it when you get a meeting of worlds where people don't know each other and they all collide and it all works really well. And it was very much like that. They're super nice. So yeah, I met them, I messaged them because of their YouTube channel. So regardless of what happens with our channel, etc., if I've met and established a great friendship through it, it doesn't really matter after that. They've been really good. So they're doing a bit of research where they are now. We'll be hopefully meeting up with them again in the spring. Yeah, good people. Trying to catch up on some of these. Nottingham. Yeah, my son lives in Nottingham. He's still a Leicester fan though. I didn't lose him completely. Yeah, you're right, Russ. And also, the other good thing about their channel, I think, is that it is different. You know, I mean, they've got a nice vibe. I was watching theirs today, and it just makes me smile all the way through. Um, yes, excellent, good people. And that's true, Glyn. Most people, yeah, we've experienced the same thing. Most people that we've met on the canal have been super nice, and it's like peeling back the years, if you will, to an age where people had a bit more time. Because I don't think people are less friendly these days. I just don't think people have got the time, or at least they don't perceive they have the time to be friendly. Um, because the same people you'll meet on the street probably ain't got time to talk to you, but when they're walking their dog on the canal and they haven't got a boat, they have got time. And so I think it's just the atmosphere of the canal, because it is a slower pace, and there really isn't, there shouldn't be a necessity for you to be in a hurry if you're on the canal for any reason whatsoever. So I think that allows people to maybe show a better side of themselves and just take a moment, you know. All right, Mark, you take it easy, mate. Ah, yes, the cruising the cook guy. Yeah, yeah. I watched loads of his videos when we were coming back from the Philippines. And he's very informative. Um, he was actually moored near where we had the boat blacked. He was moored at the marina around the corner temporarily, because he's been doing other vlogs recently, um, with camper vans and all kinds of things. Yeah, yeah, good stuff. Very informative stuff. I said the old Hobbit. I said exactly the same thing to them. They remind me of kids' TV presenters. They're brilliant. Yeah, really nice people. Yeah, but that's exactly what I said to them as well. They should wear dungarees, you know, like Rod, Jane, and Freddie and Jeffrey. All right, Kevin, I'm going to get a beer later. I'll see you for Thursday. Yeah, I can imagine he is. He seemed to have Russ. He seemed to not be dealing at one point well with the whole lockdown. And I did message him. He doesn't know me, but I did message him when he got back when he released his first video after that to say it was nice to see him back because I know that lockdown affected an awful lot of people in a lot of ways. And I think most people sometimes bottle it up and they're in denial. But you could see in one of his videos that he wasn't happy. And then it was just quite nice to see when he bounced back and got his mojo back. And I actually messaged him to say that it was nice to see. Wow, 30 years, Glyn. Where did you keep it? And what kind of boat did you have? Yeah, I agree 100%, Russ. When we went into lockdown in the Philippines, I knew I needed to occupy my mind because I knew that if I didn't, then descending down like a Netflix rabbit hole was going to do me no good whatsoever. But I had a punch bag on the balcony. It's in some of the earlier videos on the channel before we got the narrowboat. And that punch bag and learning Japanese kept me sane. I used to do a video every day to give me a focus, kick the crap out of the punch bag most days, and do a little bit of studying to keep my mind active. And I think that was the best thing I could have done, and to the point where I actually really enjoyed the first few months. It was like almost like having a sabbatical, but it went on for too long. Yeah. Don't remain a tadpole. Thanks, because that's exactly why I started watching these videos. I started watching them because it's a great way to passively learn. Because sometimes it's little things that you forget to ask about or you don't realize, and then it kind of hits you through watching a video about something you're interested in. So if any of my nonsense has helped at all, then fantastic. Do you know something? Nick and Polly, we've got to get Tim and Sam to wear dungarees. I'm going to mention it to them. They've got to wear and like blue dungarees and red sweatshirts. I'm not sure, but I think they're in one in their logo. They look like that. But yeah, 100%. I'm not sure they'll appreciate me saying this, but well, I was 1 year after you, Glyn. Absolutely. And Russ, where we were, as Kevin will tell you, we our lockdown in the Philippines was very different to here. They only allowed one person per household a quarantine pass to go shopping, and I had to have that pass because I had to pay my staff every 2 weeks. So poor Camille was stuck in the house. Literally, if we didn't have the balcony and the sort of space outside where the pool was, even though we weren't allowed to use the pool, um, I can only imagine how that would affect people being stuck in a place that doesn't where you don't have the ability to experience the outdoors. So yeah, I think it was a horrendous thing for a lot of people. But I firmly believe that they should have issued a punch bag to every single household because it did me the world of good. Thank you, Russ. Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think we've dealt with the whole engine saga and and the breakdown remarkably well. When we broke down in Polesworth, Kevin came out and tried to get us started, and we had an Indian and some beers. And I think sometimes the weather was good, thankfully as well. When we broke down, it was glorious that week. But people have been very helpful, and in many ways, I think I'm glad it happened then than now, because if it happened now, October or November time, it would have been absolutely grueling to have gone through the last few months going forward with the weather changing the way it is done. So I'm grateful that when we did break down, it was glorious sunshine and we were in a nice little village. And now we're all sorted for the winter, because it's not just the propulsion, the engine also supplies our hot water and our power, because the solar's not going to be much come the winter. So I'm really glad that it happened when it did. So yeah, I'm very happy. And also, it's pointed us in a direction where we've met some really good people, um, and that for me is more valuable than anything, because we've now got sort of more people that we can sort of ask questions of, or and we know where we're going to be coming next year to get some of the work that still needs to be done completed. Sorry, Nick and Polly. It's Nick. I just saw your comment. Kyle, if you're thinking about when we went out shopping on the bikes and they had the police checkpoint, etc., etc. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's pretty. It was. It's quite intimidating. If I mean, for me, I don't guns don't bother me so much because I've lived in countries where they're quite normal, and I've been in Africa and hitchhiked through some not particularly great parts of the world. So the fact that there's a checkpoint there with weapons didn't really phase me. And then when the voice behind the mask with the weapon knew my name and didn't ask to see my quarantine pass anyway, that also alleviated a lot of worries. But for people that were out there that never really sort of been through that, it can be quite intimidating, especially because the lines get drawn and you become very aware that you are a foreigner, you know, and it only has to go a little further in the wrong direction for the general population for that to mean more than you realise. Don't remain a tadpole. Yeah, I had a lot of friends in Vietnam during that period. We used to get a lot of well, because Tim and Sam used to be English teachers in Vietnam and then China, and we used to get at the dive shop. We used to get a lot of English teachers from all over Asia. So during Lunar New Year, I won't call it Chinese New Year because it doesn't belong to China. It's Tet in Vietnam, and all of Asia celebrates. It's the largest mammalian migration on the planet is Lunar New Year. So we had a lot of people from Vietnam that used to come to the dive center, and I was in communication with them. And the lockdown there seemed to be, at the time, dealt with way better than in the Philippines. So there was a lot more freedom. And that's only now coming to an end, where a lot of those guys are now having to leave Vietnam now when their contracts are finishing, etc. I'm really gutted though, because we planned to go to Vietnam in April for the Grand Prix that got cancelled. Our plan was to do the F1 and go to Hoi An and do a bit of a mix of stuff. And it was one of my few regrets of leaving Asia is that I didn't get to Vietnam. So I'm very jealous of you guys. Yeah, a bit like central heating breakdown. Yeah, because people go on about boats being a lot of maintenance, Russ. But the thing is, if it is your home and your transportation all rolled into one, so it's a bit like fixing your car and like your central heating's broke down. So the boiler can go, or something can go, your alternator on your car. But of course, you put all those into one thing, and that's living on a narrowboat. Hello, Gary. Feeling the foot. Oh, Gary from New Hope up at Street Hay. Oh, okay, yes. The force I will feel, yes. Have you done any Star Wars livery on your boat yet? I forgot to come and chat to you before we left. That's very true, old Hobbit. Yeah, I mean, you have to draw on your experiences. Yeah, I met a gentleman as we were leaving Leicester. I said hello to a guy, and I still chat to him. I won't name him, but I chat to him through my Facebook, and I just said hello, and he kind of was walking past the locks, and I got into a conversation with him, and he hadn't had a particularly pleasant time through the lockdown. It had affected him, and I said to him at the time, "There's a lot of people that the lockdown affected, and still does, and it's just the fact that a lot of people didn't acknowledge it because it affected a lot of people in a lot of different ways." And I think he was hanging out on the canal just for a bit of countryside within the city. I had a nice conversation with him, and we've kind of stayed in touch. And it was quite nice that you can, just by being human and friendly, have an impact on someone who's perhaps not having the best time, because we all have our low moments. And I think what happens with a lot of people, and I think this happened during lockdown, it compounded it. And if you're not having a great time, it can compound that as well. So yeah, I go by my punch bag theory. I think being able to physical exercise is so important. And I think especially when you're going through a hard time. So even if it's just going for a walk, yeah, it's so important. Hello, Raina in Germany. Thank you very much. Where in Germany are you? I found out today that one of my friends who used to, going back to what I was talking about, English teachers, he was an English teacher in China, and he got trapped at the dive center and couldn't get back to China. And then he's ended up back in the UK. I found out this morning that he's now living in Germany. Very true, Russ. I think the canals were extremely busy with people during lockdown for that reason. I think okay, don't remain a tadpole. The prices of the boats are going up because of the demand, because the boats have already been built, so the cost of steel, I don't think, has driven them up much. Um, but there's a huge demand for it now. I mean, they were going up hugely when we were looking, and we had to take a, as I mentioned earlier, if we had come back to England 2 weeks later, we would have had to have gone into hotel quarantine, and that would have been 2.5 grand of our budget gone. So we didn't know that, but we were so glad that we struck quickly and got on to Badger. So we've had a nice little home for the last 6 months. But there are, it depends. I mean, if you want to message me privately, there are some boats available still that have been. It's difficult to know when you look on the websites and you see, because they make everything look nice. And then, of course, you've got to pay for a survey to ensure that they're good. But there was one the other day here that got surveyed, and it's particularly fine. Um, and that sale didn't go through. Um, but there's plenty of boats available still. They are quite high, so I guess it depends on your budget and what you're looking for. But I still think there's some gems out there. And also, I still believe, as much as we would like more space, that it is possible. So, I mean, people live on camper vans, and they're much smaller than Badger is. So I think the layout is more important of the boat than sometimes the size. Very true, Glenn. Just get out there. It's the most important thing, I think. Just getting out there, outdoors. I don't think necessarily going to a gym is going to help, but I think sometimes being outdoors and some exercise is really good. Through the winter, I've got an axe now to replace the punch bag, and so hopefully I won't scare too many people on the cut. But I'll be chopping wood that I find a bit like sledgehammer training. Where have you been looking, Don't Remain a Tadpole, for boats? I would imagine you've been looking on Apollo Duck and a lot of the marinas. Um, but a lot of people are selling them privately, and they're not going through brokerages. And you'll see them sometimes on the canal. Um, but there's still some bargains out there. I still get boat envy when I pass, even though we've got Badger now. We'll pass boats, and I get boat envy all the time. Yeah, Nick and Polly, that's true. But to be fair, you're always going to have to do work on a boat. I mean, there's always going to be something. So I think if you go into it with that mindset anyway, um, there's definitely bargains to be had. The old Hobbit, take it easy. I would say though, Russ, that the price boats in the London area, I think, are more expensive because people are using those primarily as an alternative for living in London than renting it. So I think there's a little bit of a bubble if you were to remove those boats from that area, because I think when they're selling them with those notices, their target audience is the people who are living in London. But if you go further up north, the boats are a lot cheaper. Mm. Well, as I said earlier, I'm very surprised at how many people, because this was like impromptu, and I kind of only messaged a couple of my friends to test out the live stream. So it's been very nice to do a Q&A. So I will announce the next one, and will involve Camille, because I know you want to look at that face more than this one. But also, there's some questions. A lot of you guys out there are going to have questions that really only a lady can answer, because a woman's boating experience is going to be different. You know, do I think that YouTubers have made canal boats more popular? No, I think I think that it's become more popular for various reasons. I think people have found it on YouTube because they were looking. Um, I think it's been on television a little bit. I found out since I come back to the UK. I don't watch TV, but I have been told. I think what's happened is that people have just got access to cameras more. It's a bit like when I was diving. When I first started filming, my YouTube channel initially started for me as a diving instructor in scuba diving. And in those days, cameras and taking them underwater was rare. And I think now it's one of those things where I think that what's happened is it's become more accessible for people to realize that, and editing suites on computers are easier. And so I think the camera, YouTube, and editing suites have become more accessible to boaters. So I think that there's a proliferation of these vlogs because it's quite a natural thing. I mean, it's quite nice to document what you do, even if it's just for yourself and friends and extended family around the world. So I think maybe the perception that YouTubers have made the canals more popular, I just think there's more canal YouTubers because it's become more accessible. Um, and I think also lockdown, people were bored. They needed something to do. Someone mentioned there's loads of jokes about people doing podcasts during lockdown. And I think people have found it as a creative outlet. And they've probably realised that it's not that difficult. I mean, look at the technology that we have available. You've got iPads that are more sophisticated than we saw on Star Trek. We can fly drones around, and we've got more editing capability on our laptops than they had in Hollywood in the 80s. It's quite incredible what we have access to, really. And for me, it's fun. It's fun to play with. I've always enjoyed the experience of doing the underwater ones. And then when we used to travel a little bit, I would do them. So for me, I quite enjoy the experience of putting the little films together, and the fact that any of you that may enjoy them, is a huge bonus. When I bump into people on the canal and they compliment or have nice feedback, it's just nice because I do it primarily because I enjoy doing it, and it also helps me stay in touch with a sort of wider friend circle from my sort of global travels of diving, etc. And all the rest of it is a huge bonus. It's a huge bonus. That's true. Some of the YouTube channels are getting extremely big now. I remember watching when I started watching some of these channels, Russ, when I was in the Philippines, and there was a lot less of them at that particular time. But I remember even the Foxes at that particular time, they probably only had about 20% or 25% of the number of subscribers that they currently have. And to be fair to them, the production that their value that they put into what they do is excellent. I mean, it's worthy of being on television. It's excellent stuff. But the beauty of it with having so many now is that there's horses for courses, if you will. I mean, I very much like Robbie Cumming, and I like Tim and Sam, and they obviously appeal to a different demographic. But there's a lot out there that are well worth watching, and so there's lots of different flavors to keep you entertained. And we all have different experiences, don't forget. So it's one of those things where our experience coming back from Asia and going from Heathrow Airport to the boat isn't going to be typical. But I bumped into a lovely lady, and she's got a channel, No More Than Four, I think it's called. And they moved back from France, and I met them because their boat was extremely unique, very, very colourful, and nicely done. So I struck up a conversation with her just about the fact that I complimented the boat and I wanted to take a picture of it. So I thought I'd ask, and then I'm still in communication with them. And it's an extension of what she likes to do, to put the channel together. So it's just different flavours. Yeah, and that's right, Cruising the Cut. But he's also now ventured out. I think he realised, David, on Cruising the Cut, that there are so many narrowboat channels, as it were. And he was one of the vanguard. He was one of the originals, and has a huge following. And now he's taking it in slightly different directions with the camper vans and this, that, and the other. And I think that's been really good for him, and I find it quite entertaining. Nick and Polly, as I said, I do these primarily because I enjoy doing them. It's fun. I mean, I used to just do the underwater ones, or when we went traveling to Japan or whatever. I used to do it because I quite like the creative process. And the first time when I had to make a transition between doing the underwater stuff, where obviously I'm not talking, and I did one at the dive centre, I was so embarrassed in the house talking to the microphone that I hid in the toilet with my laptop talking to it because I was very self-conscious, and I don't really care anymore. I quite like the whole sort of process of it all. It's fun, and I think people will watch what they want to watch, and if they want to watch it, that's great. But I started it primarily because I wanted people that I knew when I worked with in Jamaica and Africa and the Philippines. I wanted them to stay in touch, and it's a little easier for them to watch that than to have to sort of ask you loads of questions all the time. And it's fun to share. It's just fun to share. It's a great environment, and the amount of people that I knew personally that had no idea about the Canal network, and it's kind of opened their eyes to it. That's been quite nice. And then the fact that you guys, spotters, and then you watch the videos is excellent. It makes me no, it makes it. The guy around the corner the other day, he's got a little boat, and I just said hello because it was a nice day. And he said he watched the videos, and it just immediately gave me a big smile. Um, yeah, it's fun. Privacy as well, though, Nick and Polly. I don't know though. Doing what I used to do at the dive centre is a bit like being a pub landlord, and you don't have any privacy when you do those kind of things because you're very much on stage. So when I used to run the dive centre, you're very much front and centre. Anyone who came to my dive centre knew I was the manager because I was very front and centre. And you're on stage, and I think really I don't really mind doing that. I talk to everybody anyway, and but I am quite private. So obviously, I mean, but it's no different than any other walk of life, really. I mean, you're going to be moving around. If people spot the boat and they recognise it, that's fine. I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where I can't go to Tesco's or anything like that. So I'm not worried. Where are we? Glyn, have I had any nasty comments? How do I deal with them? I've got no time for it. I'm a bit. I've gone a lot grayer over the years, and I've not had any sort of trolls online. But I mean, I've had problems in the past when I was running various dive centres or in general. You're going to get those people, and there's always you're going to get them in the street. Um, no, I'll focus on the positive. I think if there's one thing that all the traveling that I've done has taught me is that the majority of people on the planet are really quite nice. And but unfortunately, it doesn't make great news, does it? I mean, you're not going to turn the news on and they're going to say, today, millions of people in Africa were very nice to each other. No, this is always going to focus on something that's dramatic or going to steer you down that negative sort of, because it's shock value. And I think that the majority of people that you meet are usually pretty nice. And I think this the slice of sort of humanity, if you will, that you see on the canal is no different to any other walk of life. I just think that it's the pace of life that we sort of have to live gives people the time to be a bit more engaging. So I think it allows you to be a bit calmer and have that moment where you have time to talk to somebody. Because I think that what's happened is wherever you are in the world, they've made everyone be in such a hurry. No one's got time for anybody anymore. And so that can come across as abrupt. It can come across as rude. And sometimes if you are really busy, you just don't have the time to explain yourself. Um, yeah, big choice. You don't remain a tadpole out there. Da, da, da. Yeah, I think really with the you can go several ways when you're doing these channels, and I like to do a little bit of everything really because I wouldn't want to make a video that's formulaic every week where it's going to be exactly the same format. And I mean, I say luckily, unfortunately, we've had to change the engine so I can sort of document the processes without going into too much detail. But again, if people want to ask you questions about what's going on, it might trigger a question when they see what you're going through. And it also might alleviate a lot of the worry when they can see some of the things that are going, and it's not as catastrophic as perhaps they were envisaging. But you can also go down the other path. There's another one that I was watching. He's now got it all finished, narrowboat that James built. Well, he went into a lot of detail about everything that he did. And it was an extremely popular channel because you kind of got invested into the process because he was doing an awful lot of work to get his narrowboat up to scratch. And you can actually see in very, very finite detail what he was actually doing. So it's quite interesting. And for me, I used to watch it and it used to take the worry. If I thought I had to do something, I'd go look through his for when he's done it, and you realise that it's not as much as you thought it was going to be. And also different lifestyles. Like as I said, I mean, the way we live on this will be hugely different to the way someone would live on one of the all bells, all singing, all dancing, 62-foot, washing machine, widescreen TV. We've got a TV on the boat. We haven't turned it on once in 6 months. Hello, Rob. Oh, hang on a sec, Rob. My cousin in Ohio is just, so it would be rude of me. There we go. There you go, Rob. Thank you very much. It's actually extremely comfortable. Yes, Russ, Little Venice is something that we discovered through YouTube channels, and I'd like to spend I'd like to more down there and experience London from that perspective. It looks, and again, I've been to London God knows how many times in my life, and I never knew about that particular aspect of the canals. I never thought about London from a canal perspective, and I wasn't oblivious to the fact that the canals do go down there, but I just had never thought about it. And now we're heading down there in the spring. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I mean, we're completely in love with the countryside aspects. We like the very sort of the wild moorings, if you will. We like to be out there where it's maybe just us or us in another boat, and the sheep don't get any ideas. And it's just nice. But there's something to be said when we went to Stratford upon Avon, for instance, and we're right in the middle of Stratford. Not that it's like New York City or anything, but we're right in the middle of Stratford upon Avon, living on our boat, a stone's throw from Shakespeare's statue in the middle of everything. And then the same when we went back to Leicester and we moored at Castle Gardens and we're right in the city centre. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that in Birmingham. I'm looking forward to doing that in Manchester, and I'm looking forward to doing that in London. I think that's the great thing about the canal network, is that you have the ability to travel the country and see the beauty of the countryside and then the vibrancy of the city, all from your own living room, if you will. Where am I? Where to after Leicester? From Mumbai. We're going to head back to the Warwick area, I think. Warwick, Leamington, Spa, around that area. And because we're not going to stay in one place over winter, we want to move, even if it's just to move a couple of miles for the sake of moving and charging the batteries. The whole aspect of moving is quite pleasing. We're not far from Birmingham, Danny. Hello, Danny, at the moment, but I'm going to do that next year because it's not sort of where we're going to be heading as soon as all the work's finished on the boat. But I mean, loads of people have said, "Oh, don't go through Birmingham," but they said that about Leicester, and we had a great time in Leicester. It was no problem at all. Well, I was one of those horrible little toe rags when I was a kid in Leicester, so it doesn't worry me much. And the gas, what do they call it? Gas Street Basin in Birmingham. It looks like a great place to sort of pitch up for a few days to explore the city from. Yeah, I love it, Rob. Thank you. Yeah, my little bald head's very warm. Don't remain a tadpole. That's the thing. When you, I mean, I'm sure you weren't oblivious to the canal network, but then when you start looking at the canal network and you realise that there's 2,000 miles of navigable river and canals, and you see how much of the UK you can reach, it's staggering. And of course, at 3 miles an hour, it's going to take you forever, but that's the beauty of it. I mean, it's a massive cliche, and I've said it before on one of the vlogs, that they say that, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And it could never be more true than on a narrowboat, because, I mean, I ride motorbikes, and you're out there in the environment, but you can't sort of sit there and go, "Oh, wow, look at this," because you're going to crash. But you can do that on a narrowboat because you're only moving at a couple of miles an hour, so it's you can take everything in. Um, yeah, it's great. Yeah, out of all the travelling I've done, I'd say that this has been my favourite. I mean, trains. I love trains, but my favourite mode of transportation because it's not really that important how fast you get anywhere, and it's such a pleasure. Unless it's days like today, it's freezing, but it's such a pleasure to be out in the open air and in the countryside and be able to really soak it all up. Yeah, I saw Nick and Polly. I saw James going through the tunnel as well. Yeah, I do. Again, when you watch all these little channels, I think for me, like I said, I like Robbie Cummings' channel and Tim and Sam, lovely. Um, but there's something very engaging about James. He just seems like one of those guys that would be very, very approachable. I think what it is with him is you feel like you already know him. What's this? Da-da-da-da. Yeah, I wonder if I'm going to have to tell Tim and Sam that I've got now a big movement now on YouTube that they've got to wear dungarees. I'm pretty sure. I'm actually sure that Sam already has. I think we need to get Tim in them. Do I have a portable generator on board? Not at the moment, Glenn. Um, you hear a lot of people on certain vlogs who don't like them, but the fact of the matter is that there's a generator going on outside right now. Does it bother me? Not in the slightest, right? Because it's cold. You don't want people's batteries failing in the winter. It doesn't really bother me. If I wanted to, if it was disturbing me, I'd put headphones on. But I understand why someone would have to use one. And I'm thinking about getting one as an emergency because we've had battery issues in the very early stages of being on board the boat. We went from Heathrow Airport to the boat in quarantine, and because we had the Eberspacher diesel blow up, we weren't really familiar with the machinations of it, and I didn't realise how much power they draw trying to kick in, and it was instrumental in draining the batteries. So then we had to run the engine to charge the batteries up, and then the fan belt snapped on the engine. So Elliot had to come and do a jerry rig fix while we got another fan belt. And so I can only imagine if that had happened to us in the middle of winter, in the middle of nowhere, and we didn't have the means to start the engine or get the batteries charged up, could leave you in a bit of a predicament. So if you've got a redundancy like a generator, I think it's not a bad thing. And also, if you've got work to do on the boat, I would prefer to use a generator for the power tools than to run it through the inverter on the boat because you want to look after your batteries on the boat for precisely the reasons I've just mentioned. Because well, things happen, you know. So Nick and Polly, have you got the vision of Tim and Sam in their dungarees? To me, to you, to you. Ah, from Puerto Rico. Hello, Victor. Now, Victor, you'd be very surprised to hear that many years ago, when I was a very, very young lad, I was in the US Air Force and I went through basic training with some lads from Puerto Rico. Yeah. And in fact, one of those guys, Linares, I bumped into at an airport years and years later, and he'd been stationed out in Spain, direct duty. Going back a few years now, though, when I was young and less grey. Puerto Rico in the house. Happy days. Yeah, I thought so. I thought Nick. Yeah, I thought Sam had some dungarees, and I'm sure, in my mind's eye, I'm sure it's on the logo. Now, Russ, I've been told you have to book No, I'm sure I've looked into it. You have to book Little Venice. I think you can only stay about 5 days, but it's definitely on my cards. I'm definitely doing that. Yes, Nick and Polly, power. Yeah, it's. If you've got any hints and tips, please throw them our way, because it's something that you have to manage constantly. No worries, Victor. Yeah, I still remember those two guys very, very clearly. White Gote from Puerto Rico, he was famous in the basic training flight because he could shine boots to make them look like glass. And while I was in basic training, our instructor, I got selected to be put forward as the person who would be in competition against our sister flight for various things like military bearing and dress and answering stupid questions. And so they assigned certain people to do my gear for that week so that I would look great if I got called sort of for the competition. And White Gote showed me how he did his boots, just the heel, sorry, the toes, unbelievable. And I've sought like hell to never have to polish a pair of boots ever again in my whole life. But when I do, I know how to do them properly. He is interesting character, and Linares was awesome. He was because we were all in alphabetical order in basic training in the beds. It was Linares Garcia, and my last name begins with F. So F and G. We were only a couple of beds away from each other, so we used to sort of help each other out with all manner of tasks that you have to do to keep them. Long time ago now, and I was only 17. Only 48 hours in Little Venice. I thought it was longer on the CRT website, but we'll figure it out. I think it was 12 quid a night as well, which was expensive, but I think I would do it as a one off. Don't remain a taboo. Diesel versus coal stove. This is one of those things where I think if you've got a diesel stove, well, maybe we had a diesel blow heater, which I don't like. But the diesel stove, Tim and Sam have got one on Mary L, and they love it. And I think one of the advantages of that is that obviously they're very economical, and if you've got diesel, you're all good to go. But I think people who go down the solid fuel route, I think there's a lot of people who preach about the atmosphere that it creates on a boat, which I've experienced on people's boats, and I I quite like the idea of the solid fuel stove. I can't even explain to you why, if I'm brutally honest. I think what draws me to it is the atmosphere that it creates on a boat, the real flame, if you will. Um, and also, I quite like the idea of being a bit of a forager. Because when I got all that wood that I'll be drying in my sister's storage, because the wood I collected, I'll have to dry for a year. And my sister's volunteered because she's got real fires in her place, and we're going to dry that wood and any other wood that I collect and chop up at her place until next year. And in the meantime, we'll buy stuff in. But I quite like the idea of being able to forage for your um, fuel as well. Where am I? Cheers, Russ. I'd appreciate that. Lithium, yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and yeah. Now, the thing about the lithium batteries, they are excellent, but they're also very pricey. And at the moment, I've just finished doing the engine, and the solid fuel stove has been purchased, and that's going in. So the next set of batteries that I do when I replace these, I'm going to do the lithium. Yeah, they're a deeper charge, last longer, store more. Yeah, no, 100%. I agree. We're on the same page, Claire. Yes, Nick and Polly. Toilets is the same thing. I mean, but there's that now. Now there's more, because now you've got the cassette toilet versus the compost toilet versus the pump out. So now there's three options. We've got a cassette toilet at the moment. It always comes down to toilets on boats, always, doesn't it? And I know there's a huge, how can I put it, debate about compost toilet and the disposal of the solid waste. But I think that's being dealt with, and I still think that will. I still think that will resolve itself. And I personally wouldn't mind going down the compost route myself, because I think they're not really compost toilets though. They're like just water. They're just liquid separators, if you will. Because most people don't go the next step and use what they have produced to produce compost, and that takes a little longer than most people realise. But yeah, I still think I'd like to go down that route if possible. It's the one thing that I will not allow Camille to do is empty the LSAN, because it's vile. Ah, I did forget the Cinderella toilet. Yes. Get yourself a reclaimed battery pack out of an electric car. That'd be a serious power cell, wouldn't it? I didn't think about that. Is the boat insulated enough for winter? I don't know. I've not been through winter yet. When we arrived in March, it was about probably what it is like now, but we were expecting it to be colder than the Philippines, so we didn't really have any frame of reference, and we were okay. The heating that was in the boat more than adequate to heat the boat up. But the problem with the diesel Eberspacher blower is that it has to be on all the time, because the boats aren't insulated that well where they'll retain that heat. So we're kind of hoping that with the solid fuel stove, because of the way it generates and radiates the heat and retains it, we're hoping that we'll be okay. If you see me doing one of these live ones and there's like an icicle dripping from my nose, it means the insulation was not adequate. Yeah, the lithium is the way to go for sure. They do have a lot more rechargeable cycles, and yeah, 100%. But they're not cheap at the moment, and it's my budget will be until next spring. Well, it'll be the next time when these batteries give out, then I will definitely replace them with lithium. How many coats can Camille wear at one time? Cam. Elliot wants to know how many coats you can wear at one time. One's adequate. She's got some nice coats. Yeah, I'll be very surprised if those reclaimed electric car battery. Elliot, do you have any idea how much those batteries would cost from a reclaimed electric car, or a reclaimed battery from an electric car? Now we're going to cruise all winter, Renee. for whatever distance that is allowable with all the closures in our area. I don't want to be stuck in one place. We've missed being able to travel. We've enjoyed this area for the time that we've been here, and I'm glad that if we had to be stuck anywhere for 3 months, I'm glad it was here because the people have been superb, and it's not pretty countryside. This particular stretch of the Birmingham Fazeley, especially, really, really nice to moor down here and still have access up here to Lidl and Asda, and all the conveniences that are thereof. And there's also a water point. There's 2 water points here and waste disposal. It's been very, very good. But I don't want to stay in one place. I kind of like the aspect of moving, even if it's cold. Victor, I would like to have the same experience of narrowboating that you and the others have had these 3 months. Well, Victor, you can rent narrowboats out for a period of time. It's not inexpensive anymore though. It's quite pricey, but it is possible to do. However, if you've got a group of you that can come and do it, some of the boats are big enough to sleep quite a few people, and then you can split the cost several ways. Nick and Polly, what power are you guys using? All right. Also, don't remain a tadpole. Message me if you've got any questions. I'm all good for that. Yeah. Me and Tim and Sam were talking about a recently repatriated from Asia group that you'll be able to be part of. You take it easy. Cheers, Glyn. I've got to risk a run down to the booze shop in a minute in this rain and get some food as well. Notice the priorities there. What time is it? Nick and Polly, I'll have to chat to you about this for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to as much information as I can possibly get from anything. All right, Russ, you take it easy as well. This is good time, and I'm probably going to wrap up in about 5 minutes, mostly because I've got to go and purchase some stuff from the shop, and it's raining, and I'm not looking forward to it. Of course, Renee, priorities. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a genius plan, Russ. Happy days. Yeah, 100%. Well, I have to say that as a test live stream, I've been massively, massively happy and very grateful for everyone that's joined in from all over the world. We've had India and Puerto Rico, Australia, States. Brilliant. Yeah. So I can only imagine if I actually plan one of these out properly and let everybody know. But it's also good because everyone's got a lot of input. And Nick and Polly, I mean, maybe we'll do one on power as well, because I mean, there's so much information that different people have got, and if they've got first-hand experience of whatever it is that they're using, that's really handy information to then pass on. That, and I've had 2.5 hours of really productive time rather than sat here wondering what I'm going to be doing. It's raining outside. All right, so before I wrap up, I'm going to switch off in a couple of minutes. Does anyone have any last questions or anything that they want to say? And then I'm going to let you all get back to whatever it was that you were doing, and I'm going to risk my life and pneumonia going to the shop. Cheers, Russ. Awesome. Nick and Polly, awesome. Thank you very much as well. Yes, definitely get Camille in soon. Yeah, I didn't anticipate this being as popular as it was going to be today, but it's put a big smile on my face. So it's good, and it's good to be able to interact with people. What I'll do, Nick, I'll edit the latest post, and I'll put an email address in the last video. So give me an hour or so after I come back from the shop, and I'll edit that, and you can use that email address. Okay. That's a good question, Kyle. That's a very good question. I don't know. We kind of ran out of all the main stuff yesterday, and I kind of didn't anticipate the weather being like this. So yesterday I said I'll go down to the shop and we'll do a big shop. It's going to be a quick shop now though, just for tonight. So I don't know, maybe chili tonight. I think it's the weather for a good chili. Nick, Polly, awesome. I look forward to hearing that as well. Picking your brains. Thanks, Russ. I've got unlimited data. That's one thing I've learned is always make sure you got unlimited. Yeah. And I can't abuse the dive shop's internet anymore. It's mine, so all good. All right, Kyle. See you soon, hopefully, as well. All right, guys. You guys take it easy. Matane. And thanks for everybody that's not only joined in to watch, but has also participated and asked questions. And yeah, man, I hope, I'm going to do this again soon. It was fun. It was a lot more fun than I was anticipating. Stuff. All right, you guys stay dry and stay warm.